I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, one and all. Welcome. It's nice to see everyone here on a nice, cold, snowy morning. But anyway, welcome. This is our Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 Lincoln County Commission meeting. And with that being said, I have a request to remove on the agenda today item 2 and 9 of regular business. Is there any public input on that? With that being said, can I have a motion?
With those changes, Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Aaron, second by Schmidt. Any discussion amongst the commission?
To clarify, you just want to move them to the next agenda?
Correct, madam. Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes. With that being said, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Aaron, second by Schmidt. Any discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes. And do we have a motion then, let's see, to move, to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any input from the public? That being said, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes. All right, moving on then to regular business. Item number 1, Toby?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Toby Brown, representing County Planning Department. This first item before you this morning is an appeal of an approval by the Planning Commission of a conditional use permit for an agricultural-related operation, specifically a digester. Subject property is approximately 5 miles to the west or a little bit to the southwest of the town of Hudson. Subject property is zoned A1 agricultural as well as all surrounding properties. Subject property is improved with a feed lot, specifically a heifer lot. These are some shots from the screen. The applicants are proposing to lease a portion of the property to develop a digester. The digester allows methane gas to be captured and then converted to natural gas, which is a separate part of the process. This part of the process is really just the digester tanks and the associated equipment. The comprehensive plan identifies that agriculture-related operations are supported if they're in compliance with agricultural and also if they're in compliance with the neighborhood area. As was noted in the staff report, subject property is approximately a mile. I'll clarify that the closest house is approximately a half a mile to the southwest. That house is on the property of Makota Holdings associated with the feedlot. There is a property that would be a little bit further to the southwest, be approximately 0.8 miles away. House to the north, to the northeast would be approximately 0.96 miles. And there is a house, the appellant's house is approximately 0.96, 0.97 miles to the south of the proposed site facility. As was again noted in the staff analysis, this application, as identified, is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and with the zoning regulations. There is no specific performance standards for digester agriculture-related operations, so there is no standard setback from associated dwellings. There is no setback from other operations. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff. Otherwise, the applicant is in attendance this morning, as well as the appellant, Mr. Chair.
Does the commission at this time have any questions for
Toby, this is on appeal. Why did the planning and zoning turn it down?
They approved it.
They
Yeah.
approved it?
Yes, it was approved unanimously by the Planning Commission.
Okay.
There was a lot of discussion about, a lot of the discussion that was placed by the appellant in the letter is about the safety of the operation, about the impacts to the air and things like that, so, but,
That was a unanimous vote, correct?
correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown from the commission?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any particular public input at this time?
The applicant is in attendance.
Oh,
as
the
well.
applicant
Yep.
is here. Okay. We'll have the applicant come forward, please.
Hello, I'm Mark Hill. I'm with Novia RNG, which is the parent company of Five Shot RNG, which is building this project. I'm the co-CEO.
Jared Williams, Novia RNG, co-CEO as well.
Okay.
Do we have the ability to show the presentation here?
Oh,
that's what
we
had
emailed
sent
it
in.
sooner. Okay.
Might get it better. Let me try to get that. Do you want to use the slides on that? Let's use that.
Can if possible, yeah. I'd have a printout of it.
Perfect.
So thank you for joining us. A little bit about Novia RNG and Five Shot RNG. This project is to make renewable natural gas from the East River Genetics heifer facility. The biogas basically would be putting manure into a digester, digesting it for a little bit more than 20 days. The gas comes out of there called biogas, about 55% methane, 45% carbon dioxide. We then send it through a system that purifies that into pipeline quality natural gas, which will be injecting into a Northwestern Energy pipeline that they're running from about a little bit less than 2 miles to the south of us. This is currently the pipeline that's going to the ethanol plant in Hudson. The project will support 2 full-time jobs starting in 2024 and dozens of construction jobs during construction. Some of the benefits of this is going to be decreased odors coming from the lagoons, a decrease in methane emissions released in the atmosphere. The whole point of this project is on any agricultural facilities that have lagoons storing manure. During the summer months, you will get, the manure will heat up and go through anaerobic digestion. Methane will be released. That is considered a greenhouse gas. And also other volatile organic compounds like hydrogen sulfide get released. This is just a normal operations of a agricultural facility. By putting this in the digester first, we're capturing that methane and capturing that hydrogen sulfide and odor-causing pollutants and scrubbing them and turning the methane to a beneficial purpose. This project will produce the energy of equivalent of about 800,000 gallons of gasoline per year.
You repeat that again? What was that number you just said?
About 800,000 gallons of gasoline equivalent. Now, we're not making gasoline, but just to give you kind of an idea of how much energy it's producing. We're a nationwide renewable natural gas developer. We have 2 projects in operations that have been going very well. 2 projects under construction, including one about 40 minutes from here in Morris, Iowa. We have our own internal construction engineering team. We have about 39 employees working for us right now. Some of our leadership team, I've been in the RNG business for more than 14 years. I've worked on 21 landfill gas to energy projects, 8 dairy RNG projects prior to this. Jared?
Yeah, Jared Williams, very similar background to Mark. We've been in this space. I've been in this space now over 12 years. We built 8 dairy RNG projects previous to this, and then now have built 2 that are in operation with our current company. So extensive experience.
And same thing with everybody on our team. They come from either the oil gas industry, landfill gas industry. They have previous experience in doing this. Jared, you want to go through the process overview here?
Yeah. So let me walk through. We wanted to give you just a little bit of an overview of how this whole process works. So first off, all of the manure is collected from the heifer facility, and that manure is pumped into these anaerobic digesters. So there's a large anaerobic digester. That manure will get heated and stirred in that digester. It stays in there north of 17 days. And as it starts to break down the volatile solids, methane and CO2 and hydrogen sulfide are produced in the digester. If you follow the gas side of what comes out of the digester, you can see it, if you kind of follow that arrow down, you end up with about 55% methane and 45% carbon dioxide. That gas is brought into our plant where we pressurize it up and then push it through gas membranes. These gas membranes look like bundles of kind of long spaghetti tubes, and it actually sorts out the gas particles based on their size. And so as you push this gas through those tubes, it allows the methane, the smaller molecules to pass through, and the CO2, the larger ones, get pushed off to a different stream. And so then you end up with almost pure methane, which can be injected into the natural gas pipeline and then be used as a beneficial use. The stream of CO2 and hydrogen sulfide, you can't just release that to the atmosphere. So we have to get an air permit from the state that allows us to put that into what we call a thermal oxidizer. Thermal oxidizer is like a big oven that we heat up to over 1,000 degrees, and then it destroys any nasty particles in that H2S or CO2 and actually converts the H2S to sulfur dioxide, SO2. And then once that is inert, we can release it to the atmosphere. If you follow the digestate side, so after the manure is spent, north of 17 days in the digester, it comes out as what we call digestate. And that then goes back to the heifer facility where they separate out the fiber and they use that fiber as bedding for their animals. The liquid portion goes to the lagoon. So it ends up same manure management practices that they currently have. Anytime that our facility is not injecting gas into the pipeline, we have to destroy that gas in a flare. And so it's very important that all of the gas is accounted for in our facility at all times, and none of it can be vented to the atmosphere. And so we would have a flare on site to help destroy it. To give you a feel for where this facility is, so this is here in the Eden Township, and it's kind of 296th Street, and we have a pipeline that'll come north on 482nd Avenue from Northwestern. So that pipeline runs east-west. We would extend it up north on that 482nd Avenue. This gives you a little bit of a view of where the facility is, where our facility would be in location on the property. So we're kind of up in this northeast corner, a fairly small lease area. We only have close to 2 acres of area that we take up. And it's a little bit tucked away. Here's a 3D model of what our facility will look like. So we try to keep it in a very compact area. This is the anaerobic digester here. It's an above-ground complete mix fixed roof digester, so it's not like a balloon roof like you see on some of the digesters. This here will be our manure heating building. We have a boiler and heat exchanger, some electrical room. Our gas upgrading equipment actually all fits in this fairly small container here. And then we have a couple of H2S removal vessels where we polish the gas before we inject it into the pipeline. Then you can see over here, this is where our flare and thermal oxidizer will sit several hundred feet away from the digester. This is another just site layout to give you a feel for dimensions. And then dimensions of the flare and thermal oxidizer. Here you can get a feel for what these actually look like when they're installed. This is at our Red Leaf RNG project in Michigan. This here is a thermal oxidizer, so it's a 69-foot tall, essentially tube, and the burner is down at the bottom. And then over here is the flare. When the thermal oxidizer is running, you would never know that it's running. So there's no visible emissions, there's no steam, there's no smoke. There's no odors, because you have to have north of 98% destruction in that thermal oxidizer. And then the flare is about 40 feet tall. When it is running, you would see a small flame, but the only time that that flare is running is if we're not injecting gas. This gives you a feel for what our digesters look like. This digester is actually going in over in Morris, Iowa, and will be coming on in the spring. They're bolted steel tanks, and so they build them from the ground up, very similar to how a grain bin is installed. They are lined with a special epoxy liner to prevent any leaks. And then the foundation, we embed a starter ring into the foundation. So we have a steel ring that gets built into the concrete, and then we build the digester off of that to prevent any leaks and to make sure we don't have any issues.
And then from an environmental compliance standpoint, we've talked a lot about this. All our odor and noise levels will meet local ordinances. We have to get state permits to put in all this equipment. This is equipment that's been proven. We use exact same equipment at our operational sites, and it's been meeting compliance at all those sites. Noise-producing equipment would be housed in buildings or containers. And EPA describes the benefits that this gives is what comes out of the digester after processing is much less odorous than the feedstocks that go into the digester. So EPA and just you'll see in some of our testimonials from the farmers we work with in other states have said that this actually lowers odors, not increases. And if you think about this, again, all the emissions that we're capturing are already being released from manure lagoons. We're not adding more manure emissions here. We're taking them away by properly destroying them or capturing the methane. From a safety perspective, we have automated e-stops, methane detection devices, fire detection devices, hydrogen sulfide monitoring devices installed in closed spaces. We have to meet all federal, state safety regulations. Our technicians go through quite a bit of training before they get on there. And then before we start up, we do a plant walkthrough, an annual meeting with first responders at these sites. Our expected timeline would be to start, if approved, start groundbreaking in the spring, filling the digesters in the summer, first natural gas production sometime in the fall, and steady state operations late this year. And then from the benefits to Lincoln County, two highly skilled full-time jobs, facility manager, one facility technician, the construction jobs, continued ongoing vendor work for electricians, local utilities, piping, et cetera, and then future-proofing of local agriculture. This is something that is becoming more and more common. So addressing the concerns of the appeal from the conditional use permit that was approved last month. Again, hydrogen sulfide, which is one of the concerns that is for odors, is rotten egg smell found in sewers, manure pits, lagoons, et cetera. Lagoons at any bovine facility will release hydrogen sulfide in the air, produced through anaerobic digestion of the manure. Our digesters, with the gas being properly captured or destroyed, reduce the odors from these agricultural lagoons. The anaerobic digester project at East River Genetics is going to vastly reduce the amount of hydrogen sulfide released in the air. Everything we put in has to be approved by the state of South Dakota. Those permits have gone in and are being reviewed right now. Identical flares, thermal oxidizers, and installed operating RNG projects. There have been no odor or noise complaints from neighbors at any of our existing Novia RNG projects, and Jared will read some testimonial to that. From the risks around hydrogen sulfide, certainly the gas coming out of our digesters does contain it, just like the gas being released by the lagoons, if our digester didn't exist, contain it. As Jared described, the flare and thermal oxidizer are just designed to destroy these. That's the whole point of these. They have critical safety controls that are connected to a backup electric generator. And so, if the plant goes down, the flare kicks on and destroys it. In the extraordinarily rare emergency events in which both the flare and thermal oxides are failed at light, about 90 feet in the air is a pressure relief valve on the top of the digester. And we take safety extraordinarily seriously, not just because of neighbors, but we also have our own employees right there at the site at all times. And so for our Michigan project, which is the first one to put up the digester, we actually did a study and said if this emergency pressure relief valve went off, what would it be the ground effects 200 feet away from the digester on the ground? And when we modeled that, the maximum, they do have to do different modeling. They do it at maximum average over 8 hours, over 1 hour, and over 10 minutes. They use the worst case conditions for air when they do this. And so for 8 hours, the concentration was 0.4 ppm. 1 hour was 1 ppm, and the worst case over a 10-minute period is 1.4 ppm. So if this went off and you were right next to the digester, 200 feet away, you would smell it on the ground. But in terms of safety, it is not a safety concern. It's not a safety, that doesn't exceed the safety limits put in by OSHA. So OSHA has an 8-hour limit of what this can be, which is 10 ppm. And the immediate danger to life and health that they set is 100 ppm. So we're running, if you're right there by the digester in an emergency event, we are running about 1% of the immediate health level that OSHA has set for this. And again, this is an emergency event right at the site, not a mile away from the site. But we did this because we care about the farmers who live near us, we care about our neighbors, and we have our own employees right there. Jared?
Yeah, so let me just walk through quickly one of the other concerns, or continuing a little bit with the concerns around odors. So here, this is the Jones family. They own the Trillium Hill Farms. That was the first project that we installed a digester at and got online. And then right next to them, this is the Hardy family at the Maple Road Dairy in Michigan, our second project. And so both of these dairy families live very close to the dairy, within a mile, and they have had no problems with odors. They've had no indications of falling property values, and have been very pleased with our operations so far. Our facilities are very much integrated into their dairy operations. So they have employees around our facilities regularly. Obviously, their animals, our employees are there every day. We've had zero issues with odors or any complaints or safety concerns. We have regularly given tours, specifically at the Trillium Hill Farms, where we've had over 300 people throughout an entire day coming through, seeing our facility, touring it all while it was in operation, and no issues or concerns around safety. There's also some local businesses right near our Maple Road Dairy. Across the street is a Jones Meat Market, and they have not had any concerns or issues as well. The dairies, both of these dairymen wrote letters of support and just their experience around this project. I don't know if this is the time to read those or if that comes later.
Makes no difference.
Go ahead and do them. All right, so the first one I'll put up here. This is from the Trillium Hill Farm. So I'll just read this. It says, "My name is Mike Jones, and I am one of the owners of Trillium Hill Farm in Berlin, Wisconsin. Jared and Mark asked me to write a letter about our experience with them installing and operating a digester and RNG facility at our dairy. We chose to work with Jared and Mark at Novia because they are well respected in the dairy RNG industry and have a proven track record of building and operating digesters and gas conditioning equipment. The structures and equipment that they installed on our dairy are very close to our barn and in a location where people are often working. We have been very pleased with the project and have not noticed any additional odors or noise since it has come online. In fact, we have seen a reduction in odors coming from the manure in our lagoons. We had several neighbors ask us why there was less odor this year when we were applying manure to the fields. We believe that the reduction in odor is because the manure spent several weeks in the digester, where much of the odor-causing volatile solids were destroyed and gases captured. Sending manure through the digester is the only thing that has changed this year as compared to previous years. My dad lives right across the street from the dairy and close to where the digester and gas handling equipment were installed. He has not noticed any additional odors or been unhappy with the appearance or layout of the facility. The Novia team took great care to ensure that their equipment and the site were designed to minimize leaks and any environmental impacts in the rare case of a manure spill. We are very comfortable with their approach and have been impressed with what we have seen. It is clear that the Novia team has operated in the dairy RNG space for many years and is using proven technology and equipment to keep their employees, our employees, and animals, neighbors, and the environment safe. Please reach out to me directly if you have any additional questions. Thanks, Mike Jones. We also received one from John Hardy, who's the owner of Maple Road Dairy, very similar. He says, "My name is John Hardy, and I am the owner of the Maple Road Dairy. My family and I chose to partner with Novia RNG to install a digester and RNG upgrading facility at our farm. This was a big decision for us, as it would result in a large digester and several pieces of gas conditioning equipment being installed on our dairy. I had done extensive research about different types of technology used in the renewable natural gas space and felt comfortable moving forward with what Novia proposed to our family. The equipment that they installed fits in well with the surroundings and does not stand out as looking overly industrial. The workmanship is great, and we are very pleased with the effort that was put in to reduce the likelihood of spills and leaks. A berm was installed to help capture manure if there was ever a large leak in the digester. We have been very impressed with the track record of the digester manufacturer and the leak test requirements that were in place prior to the digester being filled with manure. Commissioning of our project started in August of this year, this was 2023, and has been running extremely well from the beginning. There has been no additional noticeable noise or odors because of the project. We have several neighbors that live very close to the dairy, as well as a business across the street from our farm. We have received zero complaints about odors or noise since the project started up. We have been very happy with the decision to partner with Novia and have been pleased with their selection of equipment used for our project. Feel free to reach out with any questions. John Hardy." So the last concern that in the letter of appeal was around spills. You can see that both of these dairymen mentioned spills. We take that very serious, and so we've taken great effort to make sure that we don't have spills at our facility. And so first, there's no toxic liquid substances on site. We do keep some compressor oil, but we never have more than around 200 gallons. It is stored in a spill containment, so we're following our environmental requirements. Our anaerobic digesters are leak tested prior to being put into service. Make sure that we don't have any leaks. If any leaks are identified, we fix them before we fill them with manure. We put a lot of effort into making sure that these digesters are designed so that you don't have spills or unintended releases. So a tremendous amount of work has happened on that. It's a proven technology. So these type of digesters have been used since the 1850s. They've been used since the 1950s on manure. And Schumann Tank, our tank manufacturer, has been in operation for over 25 years and has over 1,000 of tanks in service. And so we feel very comfortable with our technology and that we can meet the requirements from an environmental and safety standpoint. Any questions for us?
Does this commission have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Gentlemen, you said that you connect to a natural gas pipeline.
Yeah.
How long, or can you just talk me through your pipeline connecting to the local natural gas infrastructure?
Yeah, and to be clear, it actually ends up not being our pipeline. The utility Northwestern Energy would run the pipeline up to us. So it's very similar to if you started a new business a mile away from a natural gas line and you wanted natural gas, you reach out to them and they run up a pipeline to you. So ours is connecting to the existing pipeline that runs from the interstate pipeline about 8 miles to the west there to the Hudson ethanol facility. So they're just running it up about between 1.5 miles and 2 miles north to our facility.
Okay. And they take care of all the infrastructure. You guys don't have to worry about that?
Yeah, correct, yep.
Okay. You mentioned in there, or one of the people from Michigan, I think it was, mentioned a berm to catch any kind of manure leak or anything like that. Is that being done here or not?
Yep, we will do that as well. So we do that at all of our facilities. We put a berm up to make sure that if there was a spill, that the manure flows in the proper direction and doesn't go off the property.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Toby, do we have one of these at the dairy down there? We have the same facility, don't we? The same concept or something at our dairies down there?
Yes, there's an existing conditional use permit for one that exists in that area on the west side of the interstate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt's question just reminded me of something. So the technology that you're using, how long has that been in existence and used?
So I don't have an exact date on it. The tank manufacturer Schumann Tanks has been in business for 25 years. They've put up 1,000 tanks in Europe, and this is just very standard cookie cutter technology for them.
Yeah, I think probably what I'm just trying to figure out, this isn't new or novel or something that was just created a year or two ago, is it?
No, and matter of fact, I mean, you go to many municipal waste plants, sewer plants, they will have digesters there. I mean, it's been pretty common in the early 20th century to put those in at those facilities. I've some of the digesters at projects that we've seen have been in operation for over 20 years on cattle facilities. So no, it is not new.
Thank you.
The term future proofing, what was that in regard to, I believe?
Yeah, and so globally, and you know, everybody has their different view of this, but globally, large companies, companies that will buy meat, buy milk, you know, your large global companies are taking in carbon emissions as something that in their buying decisions. And so what we've been seeing is on places that we have installed these, their purchasers, in this case, this is a heifer facility, actually look at that and say, well, that's reducing the carbon emissions from your site. We appreciate that, and that makes your product more attractive to us.
Okay. And then you made mention of if there ever would be a leak, there would be an odor.
Yeah, I mean,
What kind of an odor? I mean, maybe that's a stupid question.
yeah, and so this, again, we put in multiple safeguards. So normal operations is going to going through our plant, going through our oxidizer. If our plant goes down, it goes to a flare. If electricity goes out, we have a backup generator. But if you start getting into like a case where everything fails, we have then emergency relief on top of the digester, about 90 feet in the air. And that smell would be similar to if you were driving by a cattle facility already. It's going to smell very similar to a facility where this digester isn't already there, because at that point the gas is being released in the atmosphere. I describe it a lot like a rotten egg smell.
Is there a certain number of livestock that you have to make this work?
Yeah, you can, from a technical standpoint, there's not. From an economic standpoint,
This is a heifer feedlot, is that
yeah, in
correct?
terms of heifers, you know, you need several thousand in order for them to
How many?
work. Several thousand. And it has to be the right conditions and be able to capture the manure and things like that.
Any other questions by this commission? Drew, is this like a second reading where we have to have proponents and opponents, or not at this stage? It's an appeal.
Yes, you have it.
You have to, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, anybody here to support the applicants?
That was really just those two letters we were trying to.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and ask if there are any opponents that would like to speak at this time. Any public input? Please state your name and address, please.
Scott Montgomery, Fairview. I've heard, and I don't have anything to confirm this with, but I've understand that some of these plants aren't making this gas pure enough for Northern Natural to take this. Something to think about.
Thank you. All right, I guess at this particular time, no other public input. I guess I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Aaron, second by Schmidt. Is there any discussion?
Clarification, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Given this was a conditional use permit appeal, they appealed the action. We're affirming the decision from the planning and zoning with the approval.
Yeah, Commissioner Poppins, yeah, that's my motion. My motion is to approve the applicant's permit request.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you get that, Kristen? Or, excuse me, Sherry?
Yes, so we're going to uphold the planning and zoning's decision.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'll just make a couple comments in support of the motion. You asked a good question, Mr. Chair. What is future-proofing of local agriculture mean? I think it's a good question. I like the idea, and apparently it's not new, it's not novel, of turning cow manure into energy, specifically in this case, natural gas. I noted your statistic up there that in the nation of Denmark, they meet 40% of their natural gas demands through anaerobic digesters. So basically taking animal manure and turning it into energy that's used to power their lives and their homes and their businesses over there. That's great because we need more of that here in America. We need to create more American energy and have less reliance on foreign sources of energy. It's good for American national security. It's good for America's economy. So I appreciate that. And I know that this project obviously is not the silver bullet, but it contributes towards those principles. So I like that idea. And then I like the idea of this being able to support the local ag economy. I think it helps whoever this feedlot is, and I'm not sure who the feedlot is, but clearly they've tapped into something here, pardon the pun, but they've clearly connected to an idea that's not only going to help them economically, but hopefully local value-added agriculture as well. And apparently it sounds like you've got all your ducks in a row. Been a lot of discussion in this county and others about pipelines and hydrogen sulfide and all that, and it sounds like you did do your study, and it sounds like that's not going to be an issue. One of the things that I read in the appellant's letter was concerns about devaluation in their property values, and those are always a legitimate concern, and I appreciate that. I note that the appellant did not show up today, or at least did not speak. I don't know if the appellant is here in person or not. But one of the things I was going to ask the appellant is if they actually took the time to contact the Hardy family or the Jones family to actually ask them if they had the same concerns that this appellant did. Because clearly when a technology, this is not a new technology, but when it comes to an area that people are not familiar with, there's unfortunately a unwillingness on the part of people to want to reach out to where it is being used. And we need more of that, not only here in Lincoln County, but in our state and nationally, because I think it helps educate people. So for those reasons, Mr. Chair, I'll be supporting the motion.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. What's the cost of this investment? I mean, you're putting some real dollars out here.
It's well north of $10 million.
So we have a $10 million investment. which, and I won't reiterate what Commissioner Aaron's has said very, very well, but one of the things that is concerning to me is when we see size of investments that individuals want to make in our county. I think county government has to be sensitive to promoting its own economic development. And right now in Pierre, we have legislators that are saying counties don't come to us asking for money when you have opportunities for economic development and you continually turn them down. So when we look at the size of a $10 million investment, that's sizable. And that will affect our schools, that will affect this county, that will affect our roads. And the science and technology on this thing, if you go to the dairies down here, the Duck Dairies, that's been there for a long time, no complaints, no issues, none that I've ever heard of. So I fully support this, this motion.
Thank you. All right. No other discussion? Then I guess we're ready to call the roll.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes?
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 3, Lincoln County Highway 106 corridor study. Toby?
Mr. Chair, if we
Yes.
could, I need to get the PowerPoint set up, so if you want to move on to the next item, then we can come back
Okay.
to that.
You want us to go on to the next item first? Okay. I think, why don't we move on to, Harold, are you ready by chance? Could we take you at this particular time?
Well, we
Item
got number 4,
Pardon?
number 4.
Okay, we'll go on to item number 4. Go ahead, I guess, Drew, this is your item, so.
Morning, Commissioners. Drew DeGroat, Chief Civil Deputy from the State's Attorney's Office. This resolution is an update to the resolution that was passed by this board on July 11th. I had an opportunity to go back and listen to that meeting. I know it's a decision this board did not take lightly when it made its decision, but what this would do would update the legal descriptions. The property has been surveyed by Stockwell Engineering, and you can see that it's been designated as lots H2 and H3. Before surveying, Stockwell Engineering did have permission from the landowners before entering the property. We made sure of that. And so what we're seeking here is a vote on the resolution of necessity. This would update those legal descriptions and allow us to move forward in this action.
Are there any questions for Mr. DeGroot? From this commission? None? Okay, I guess none. Is there public input on this matter?
Scott Montgomery, Fairview. My understanding, the state law says that you cannot use eminent domain to take land for the construction of a courthouse unless it's brought before a vote of the people. This item has not been brought for the vote of the people, so I think you're violating the law. I know it's not for construction of the building, but it's a construction, if the building wasn't being constructed, you wouldn't be needing to do this. I think it's, I don't know if I want to use the word criminal, but to treat residents of Lincoln County this way for something that is unnecessary by the architect's own statement. He stood here and told this commission that West Road was adequate for traffic in and out of this new building. And immediately after he said that, one of the members of the committee made the idea known to the public that they ought to take this land of McKinney's for a driveway. I think it's wrong. I don't know if anybody's talked to the state, but I can't see any way in the world the state's going to give you a permit to put that driveway in when there's a road several hundred feet to the east of there. You're gonna cause a traffic nightmare like you can't believe. I would think if anybody had any sense about it, they'd put a stoplight up at West Road, and that's where your access would be. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public input? I guess if there is none, then I guess I'm looking for a motion by this commission.
Mr. Chairman, I will offer a resolution, or a motion to approve the resolution.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Poppins, a second by Commissioner Schmidt. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
appreciate the comments. Just want to make a couple comments for the public record. I think everybody knows what this motion is for. It's to create a driveway from Highway 18 going through the McKinney property up to what will be the front entrance of the new proposed courthouse. I do appreciate the fact that there were some negotiations between the county and the McKinneys. Can't make a lot of comments about that, but I just will comment that I wish we would have found some mutual resolution as opposed to having to bring this forward in this way. I do appreciate Mr. Montgomery's comment about there being an access on West Road. This commission is the one who decided where the courthouse would be. We're the ones who decided that. And I would just say when that decision was made, it was known that West Road, I think it's technically called West Road North, was an access point. And I think it was also known that we did not have access to Highway 18 at the time that we purchased the primary parcel. Under different circumstances, I would probably support the resolution today just because it is appropriate for a county to be able to get access to a building that it's going to build. I haven't read that statute in a while that Mr. Montgomery pointed to. The problem is here, and I appreciate the fact that Mr. DeGroot said the county takes this very seriously. The problem here is when you're going to use eminent domain, there should be no other access point. But in this instance, there is an access point. I understand, though, that the access point is not preferred. It's not the best access point, but we knew that when we secured that parcel. And so for that reason, I have a hard time exercising a vote today on the use of essentially, which clears the gateway for potential eminent domain, just because there is an access point. But I will say to the other commissioners, I don't say this to be confrontational or anything, but had the other access point not been there, probably would have supported the resolution.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't think anybody wants to have to exercise eminent domain, but I think there is a certain amount of history that has to go through looking at this. We were under a situation where a nuclear option could have been presented by the Second Judicial District if we didn't find adequate court facilities. Well, Commissioner Poppins and this commission searched all over Canton trying to find a place to put this. And we were unfortunately unable to find really any property that looked toward the future. Now, when I talk about future, I'm not talking about you put a Band-Aid up and you call Morton Building and you throw something up and call it good. Some may want to have that.
but we're going to spend $54 million of taxpayer money, and we're going to put up an edifice that is going to last us for how many years to come. So all of this we can do, and I don't call a access point off a township road to a $54 million facility adequate. I know it's there, I understand that, and you make a good point, Commissioner Aaron's, but I don't support that. So it wasn't as if we tried to not negotiate. I think Commissioner Poppins can reiterate the amount of negotiating time, the amount of money that was offered, well beyond the appraised value of any of this property. And to have it turned down continually going on, well, I mean, that's, Mr. McKinney can have that opinion. But there are so many options out there that could have been done. You could have had an access point that would have given a driveway to a new facility that would have been something that this county and this town should have been very proud of. Plus, you could have taken the remaining of this property, which has limited value, and turned that into a memorial park honoring the veterans of our county and making that into a showplace as well. So there's a lot of issues here that I think we have to take into consideration. So we're asking for so many feet to run a street up to a new facility that will benefit not only this county, but it'll benefit the town, and it will be something that we can all be proud of. So, and that reason I support this.
Thank you. Any other comments by this commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the McKinneys are very close friends to my in-laws. I don't take this lightly. By no means, if this site could not have an access off of Highway 18 versus a township road, would have been a site that could not, or would not be considered, or would have been considered. The next option, frankly, for this community was to consider moving it outside of the county, or out of the county seat completely. There are no willing sellers of property in this community or adjacent to this community that met the criteria that was necessary for the future of the county. You know, there's always a great scenario if there's land that's for sale that works. There wasn't. This is not an easy decision. The city of Canton has as well said that we need access directly off of 18 for services into this property. This isn't just to make some grandiose entrance, it's a necessity. And if we don't fully support the necessity of that, I cannot support this, and I nor Glenn can support the site at all. So if this is not a unanimous decision, I will be voting no, and then we can start looking at possibly moving the county seat. Because there is not an acceptable land for sale fully without some kind of hiccup. And a 2.8 acre access point for this site, if that is not an acceptable condition, then let's move the county seat, point blank. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Any other
Before we
discussion?
vote here, Mr. Chair, we got a lot of things going on here. We got plans where we've approved architectural plans, we've approved everything, and we're about ready to go out for some requests for proposals. We have to either table this thing and come to an agreement amongst ourselves before we take a vote that may have some repercussions that we don't necessarily want to have to address. So I'm understanding, Commissioner Poppins, that if we don't get a unanimous vote, you will vote no. And if you count noses, I can't speak for Commissioner, our chairman, but we could then automatically put a real kink in the whole process here. So my vote, I would say if we need to sit down and discuss this to get to where we can all find common ground. That's what we need to do.
Thank you. Okay, we've had discussion, I guess now, and we've had a motion and a second. I guess no other discussion amongst this commission. We'll go ahead and take a vote.
Commissioner Aaron's,
No.
Commissioner Poppins.
No.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes. I guess at this particular time, we have a 2-2 vote.
Motion fails.
Motion fails.
I have a question for our legal counsel. So given all of what we have done thus far by this vote, what have we really done? Ted?
I'm going to have to contact our legal counsel that's handling the eminent domain action. Moving forward, this would have cleaned up the record. We need to take a step back and reevaluate. I can come back to you with an answer.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I guess we'll move on then to,
Just one more comment,
okay,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
So, in other words, if we withdraw this whole action, and we get no driveway off, and we gotta come off of a township road, that may be satisfying to some. But I think that I'm gonna speak for the people in my district that would look at that and say, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard of. It may make sense to some, but we got 60,000 people in this town, or in our county. We got to look at the vast majority of them, of what they're paying the taxes for, what they're paying all of that real estate for, and they're not paying it to put down a gravel road off a township road to pay for $54 million. That is not good government. And some of you may not like that. Some of you may not look at that. But you just remember, there are a lot of people up there that are going to use this facility for the future. And I want something that gives a third largest county a good image and saying you had an eye for the future and you did well on it. And that got not come off of a township road. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. All right, let's move on, back to Toby, item number 3. Lincoln County Corridor 108.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present here on the Lincoln County Highway 106 corridor study, which is 271st Street. My name is John Wiggin. I'm with HDR, a transportation planner, traffic engineer. I was also project manager here for this study. So this presentation, I'll try and keep it relatively brief. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to stop me. But it gave this presentation a couple months ago to the Sioux Falls MPO committee meetings. I'll be giving the same presentation again here next week as part of their next series of committee meetings as part of finalizing the study. So given this a couple times with a few different iterations. So objectives for the corridor study, really 5 main things. First, determine number of lanes for the 106 corridor. Second is to develop alternatives for all arterial or section line intersections, develop a corridor land use and access management plan, conduct a high-level environmental overview, and ultimately, we're looking to develop a long-range plan for the 106 corridor. There was a study advisory team that was organized to help guide the study through completion. We met with the study advisory team 5 or 6 times, generally at key milestones, looking for feedback, as well as discussing next steps. And that was made up of representatives from the Southeastern Council of Governments, Sioux Falls MPO, Lincoln County, City of Harrisburg, City of Sioux Falls, and the South Dakota DOT. So the study area that we were looking at with this corridor, so again, 106, Highway 106, 271st Street, extending for approximately 9 miles between Tallgrass Avenue and 480th Avenue. So pretty lengthy corridor that we're looking at here. And we're focusing as well on 10 major arterial or section line intersections. The one thing I want to note here is that the Highway 106 is generally the boundary between the growth areas for City of Harrisburg, City of Sioux Falls. City of Sioux Falls coming down from the north, down to 106, and Harrisburg heading to the north from the south up to 106. So that's kind of where we look at it, when we're talking about, kind of a multi-jurisdictional corridor, particularly when we're thinking long range. This is certainly what we saw here with the 106 corridor. So public involvement with the corridor study, we had two main series of events. We had a series of stakeholder meetings and public open house, first on October 13th, 2022. That's where we asked for feedback on issues and needs to be addressed with the corridor study. Had very good turnout with this one, had over 100 people in attendance at the public meeting. We also had a corridor travel survey that we received quite a few responses on that as well. The second set of meetings were held on May 18th, 2023. We had, I think, just over 80 in attendance for that public meeting, and that's where we presented preliminary recommendations for feedback with those. If you are interested, there still is a study website that is up. It's hosted by the Sioux Falls MPO, so if you want to look at the various layouts, recommendations, there's a couple presentations on there as well. You can certainly find that on the MPO's website. So one of the interesting things with this corridor, and one of the things that's kind of most relatable when we're talking to the public and stakeholders in the area is traffic volumes. Volumes are pretty high right now for a two-lane roadway. Upwards 10, 11, 12,000 vehicles per day, particularly as you're looking towards the west, towards Louise Avenue, over to I-29. However, one of the things, big considerations here is that when Veterans Parkway is fully complete from I-29 over to 57th Street in Sioux Falls, a good portion of the traffic on Highway 106 is going to shift up to Veterans Parkway. That there's very little traffic currently generated on the 106 corridor. The vast majority of that traffic is essentially pass-through type traffic with an origin and destination, both of those off the corridor. So a good portion of that traffic, especially in Veterans Parkway, will have the connection to I-29 as well as Gateway Boulevard to the west into T. A lot of that traffic is going to shift up to Veterans Parkway. So upon full opening, we will see a shift, a decrease in traffic from 106 up to Veterans Parkway. So that's a big consideration when we're thinking about, what are the shorter term needs and what are the longer range needs, because there's going to be kind of that dip in traffic, and then it'll continue to increase though over time as development occurs along the corridor and throughout the area. So jumping straight to the recommendations here within the corridor study, the framework that we looked at, when we're developing these recommendations, first is establish a long-range vision for the corridor. From there, we develop alternatives. I'll go through refinement evaluation process. That leads us to recommendations. And our recommendations were termed in terms of short-term, mid-term, and long-term type recommendations. And one of the things that we really wanted to focus on with these recommendations is provide options for Lincoln County, City of Harrisburg, City of Sioux Falls, the DOT. That when it comes time to do something, there's options to whether you go with an incremental type build out or you go to that ultimate long-range full build out. Looking at different intersection types, whether you're looking at roundabouts or more your standard or traditional type intersections. Looking at corridor number of lanes and potential expansion number of lanes, 3 lanes each direction over time, as well as incorporating other area planned improvements, whether it's DOT projects or City of Sioux Falls and City of Harrisburg projects on your north-south arterials. So the recommendations were grouped into 3 main categories. First being guidance type recommendations. That looks at your corridor land use, access management, typical sections. Then we looked at need-based recommendation timelines in terms of number of lanes and intersection improvements. And finally, developing and recommending the actual conceptual layouts, what those recommendations look like at your intersections and at your segments between those major intersections. So first, starting here with those guidance type recommendations, first is a corridor land use plan. Early in the study, we met with representatives from City of Harrisburg, City of Sioux Falls, Lincoln County, to talk about future land use along the corridor. The corridor land use plan is based on comprehensive plan efforts by those agencies to date. It really focuses on node-based employment centers at your arterial intersections, very standard to what you see in Harrisburg or City of Sioux Falls. And then really the rest of the corridor looking very residential. You probably get higher density residential up along the arterial corridors, and that transitions to lower density residential as you move away from those corridors. The other thing that we did add to the land use plan at the request of the site advisory team is to make sure that we note the drainage needs. So that's looking at existing natural detention areas as well as culvert crossings, as those are going to be very important items for development and developers to look at, up front, that here are some of the drainage constraints in the area. Need to account for those and get those incorporated into your development, at the start instead of coming in at the end and making those modifications. Next item is corridor access plan, and this establishes your corridor access guidelines moving in the future, helps you identify full and partial access location, and then also identifies a framework to manage existing access. Recommendations for typical sections. Our recommendation was to be for when you're reconstructing the corridor, you're looking at urban type typical sections. This would be City of Sioux Falls, City of Harrisburg type roadway in the future, so that brings in your curb and gutter. 3 typical sections, 3-lane, which is shown in the top right, 4-lane divided, which has your 2 lanes in each direction, plus a raised median on your bottom right, and then also 5-lane section. One of the things I do want to note is that all 3 of those sections do have a shared use path on both sides of the corridor. That's something that we heard from a lot of, from the public stakeholders, state advisory team, the importance of this corridor from a multimodal travel perspective. So what that recommendation is bringing in a shared use path on both sides of the corridor for the length of the corridor. So recommendation timelines really correlate very well with City of Sioux Falls growth tiers. They have, their growth plans mapped out. The figures shown here in terms of 3 tiers. Tier 1, that's 0 to 5. Tier 2, 6 to 15 years. Tier 3, 16 to 25 years. So our recommendations in terms of improvements really correlate very well with that. City of Harrisburg growth generally aligns pretty well with your Tier 1 and Tier 2. So kind of identify that first core growth area kind of from your Tallgrass Avenue, I-29, heading eastward to your Cliff or southeastern type area. As a reminder that, with that dip in traffic, that it's the development adjacent to this corridor and within the area that's going to help drive traffic volumes here into the future. So the next 3 slides give you an idea in terms of recommendations from a roadway number of lanes standpoint as well as intersection improvements, again across your short-term, mid-term, and long-term type recommendations. So this first recommendation is your short-term recommendations, kind of that 0 to 10-year time frame. So again, that's focusing kind of on that core area from Louise Avenue to Southeastern Avenue. That's the timeline for looking to construct a 3-lane section. So that brings in your center left turn lane, your continuous center left turn lane to accommodate future developments along the corridor. Also looking at capacity improvements at your major arterial intersections. One of the things that we heard quite a bit from the public and stakeholder feedback is the success of the roundabout at the Louise Avenue intersection. Very beneficial from a safety and operations standpoint, a lot of support for roundabouts along this corridor. So our primary recommendations here would be, continue with your roundabout at Louise Avenue, but also roundabouts at Western Avenue, Cliff Avenue, and Southeastern Avenue as part of the short-term recommendation. Thinking back that we wanted to provide options and flexibility for agencies in the future, we also did incorporate the option of your standard or traditional type intersection, which would be signalized at some point in the future. So we do have those as options as well with the layouts. Midterm recommendation, 10 to 15-year time frame. This is continuing kind of in that core area from Louise Avenue to Southeastern Avenue to build out 3-lane section, make your intersection improvements. But about that time, you also start looking further to the east. You need to expand Highway 106 over to South Dakota Highway 11, look at intersection improvements there. Also looking at 106 east to Highway 11 over to 480th Avenue, that as the rural development continues in there, just to keep an eye on that area as well. And then the long-term recommendations, this is kind of that 15-plus years in terms of development along the corridor. So again, circling back to that kind of that core area, that we do have a recommendation for a multi-lane section. So this is the 2 lanes in each direction from Western Avenue to Southeastern Avenue. And the primary reasoning is for the capacity is needed at Minnesota Avenue and Cliff Avenue intersections. At Minnesota Avenue, Cliff Avenue, very high volume north-south corridors. Becomes very beneficial to have increased number of lanes on the 106 corridor as well through those intersections. Also have some considerations looking at continuing the multi-lane west to Louise Avenue or potentially over east to Highway 11, as well as the various intersection configurations. So quickly, just want to give you an idea what the recommendation layouts look like. This is an example, Louise Avenue to Western Avenue in terms of short-term recommendations. So we have these layouts for the entire corridor across the different short-term, mid-term, and long-term recommendation timelines. So in this example, so we have the primary recommendation of a multi-lane hybrid roundabout, Louise Avenue and Western Avenue. Then we also have the option from your more traditional or standard intersection shown in the inset. We illustrate the typical section elements, looking at the number of lanes along the corridor, incorporating the shared use path on both sides as well. And then also going in and identifying where those future full access intersections are looking at. So generally, from an access management standpoint, we're looking at full access about every quarter mile between those major intersections. So we wanted to get those intersections identified and really to show developers and development where they need to tie into. And then ultimately, it's up to the developers to tie into these locations because this is where they're going to get their full access. We also had a number of other type of sub-area type concepts, looking at future connections, looking at different iterations of access management. There's also a figure where we looked at grade separation of the BNSF tracks in the area, looking at impacts from potential fill footprints, also from an access management standpoint, or access impacts based on the grade separation as well. And here to close, the last thing I wanted to touch on was the very last page of the report talks about near-term recommendations. These are probably a little bit more pertinent to Lincoln County, that these are kind of to address existing needs that are out there today. They illustrate spot improvements, not necessarily necessitating full reconstruction or significant investment, but they're needs that we found from a safety or operations or public and stakeholder feedback type perspective. And the first recommendation is looking at 106 from Louise Avenue East, and that's considering to construct a 3-lane section to provide a center left turn lane for about 1/3 of a mile east of Louise Avenue. That gets you through the Landscape Garden Center access, a fair amount of turning traffic, a couple of those driveways through there. Next two recommendations in terms of adding a westbound right turn lane at the Minnesota Avenue intersection. That's a movement that backs up from time to time during the peak hours, sometimes quite a bit. Same thing, eastbound right turn lane at the Cliff Avenue intersection. Another near-term recommendation is to add crossing gates at the 106 Railroad, at-grade railroad crossing. And then the other one is the Southeastern Avenue corridor. And that is recommendation, this is bigger picture for really all the agencies involved, to begin the long-range planning for corridor improvements. Again, this is another multi-jurisdictional corridor between townships, City of Harrisburg, City of Sioux Falls, Lincoln County, all having some elements of jurisdiction along this corridor. It's going to be very important for everyone to come together and identify what that future corridor looks like and plan for future improvements along there. The one other thing I thought of that I want to touch on too is we also include recommendations on jurisdictional transfer in the report. And I know that's something very important to the county. And in general, the recommendation is that as City of Harrisburg, grows north, Sioux Falls to the south, annex, up to the highway, through the highway, whatever that may be, that's the time for the jurisdictional transfer. Because as that development occurs, the development is necessitating the capacity improvements along the corridor. So when you get to that point, you get to the annexation, you get to the point of your next major reconstruction, that's a good time to be talking about jurisdictional transfer because that's when it's going to be more of an urban type facility. So that's all I have. I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Any questions?
I want to thank you for the work you put into this. I get a lot of comments and phone calls, maybe my fellow commissioners too, about traffic on Highway 106. I'm glad you brought up the issue of landscape lawn and garden centers. In hindsight, there probably should have been a turning lane there. There's been a couple accidents there, I think rear enders, and I've also just received some comments from people in the area that they wave their magic wand and say, why wasn't there a turning lane here? So, but I think your comment goes to the larger issue of how much traffic there is and the growth that's going on. I do think it's important that we've got orderly, controlled, managed growth. And it's my hope that we take this corridor study, incorporate it into our comprehensive plan that we're working on, our new comprehensive plan, because then we can create those, ascertain what's going to be a commercial node, and then where the residential zoning will start out from there. I think that's very important. And I know Highway 106 is very important to the people who live in Spring Creek area. I represent that district. Get a lot of comments from people out there how they use that as a east-west mode of travel. And then to a lesser extent, they use the Schindler Road for north-south travel, as well as Highway 11 to get into Sioux Falls. Because let's face it, there's just a lot of people who live on acreages and who live in rural residential communities in southern Sioux Falls, and they work in town. So they live here in Lincoln County, and then they commute into town. So we're the 9th fastest growing county in the nation, fastest growing county in the state. We just need to have plans for all of this. And, I just want to underscore this, but it's also important to have these plans in place because unfortunately, we have other partners coming into this county with plans to build projects that unfortunately are inconsistent with our comprehensive plan. And when that happens, it interferes with orderly managed growth when those partners refuse to want to move their projects to places that are ordinarily zoned for commercial or industrial or rural commercial. So it's important that we send a very strong signal right away to everybody involved that this is, not only is this a traffic study, but this is going to get incorporated into our zoning plan as well. So thank you for the work you've done so far. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You mentioned Veterans Highway as that will soon be reality, and how much that traffic will shift from what currently is 106 over to the Veterans Highway, which I think will, if you travel on 106 now, you have sewer and water that has come from a rural pipeline, or that the city has put in from T all the way over practically to Harrisburg. And one of the things that you mentioned, which I think is going to change the face of that, will be if you take the traffic off of 106, and you're going to have to broaden that, you will now create, you're going to create a corridor for development like no other. I mean, commercial, I can only see on that. So I think your timely study is critical. The other thing that you mentioned in the end, it's going to be a delicate study maybe in transferring who has jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be negotiations that's going to have to take place between T and Harrisburg and the city of Sioux Falls. And, eventually Lincoln County will just be, it'll be Lincoln County. It'll all be a city, or it'll all be city, one way or the other. It's either going to be Harrisburg, T, or Sioux Falls. So I commend you. I think this study is timely, and I think it's really comes at a very good time for us as we developed, as Commissioner Ernst has said, our comprehensive plan to adopt that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll add, I did attend 2 of the informational meetings that you did have in the past, and good information, good studying, pretty good turnouts each time too, so that's good. I know at this particular time, there's really no action to be taken, but I think this is good information and appreciate your time here, and I guess we'll still open it up to public input if they have anything that they'd like to add about 106. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on, let's go to item number 5, which is Harold Timmerman in regard to a resolution declaring support and adoption of a pre-disaster mitigation, is that correct?
Yes, it is. This plan gets reviewed and updated every 5 years. Started in '23, because the plan officially ended in September. A team from CCOG, headed by Sophie Johnson, conducted meetings and invited all the cities to be involved. Many of them were. And there is a listing of those in the comprehensive plan that was in your share file. By adopting this plan, it makes it possible for entities within the county to apply for mitigation money to help do projects. And that money comes from 15% of every presidential declaration that's been held in the state. That money gets put into a fund in Pier, and once this is adopted by the county, it makes our local entities eligible to apply for that funding. One of the biggest ones that was done was our Spring Creek project years ago, which the state still likes to use as a guide and a thing for people to look at as part of their mitigation plan. So you should have a copy of the resolution before you. And so all it would take is a vote by the commission to approve this, signed by the chairman and the auditor, and we should be good to go. It did take quite some time for this plan to get done. Once CCOG formally gets it done, it gets sent to our office in Pier. They review it, and there were a couple recommendations that they would like to have CCOG do, which they did. Then it goes to Region 8 and FEMA. And that's where the hard part came in. They effectively changed the rules in the middle of the game on some of this stuff. And Sophie and her team at CCOG did an excellent job of meeting all the demands that needed to be done. It took way more time than it should have, but they did get it accomplished. So I hope they're also going to do plans for the surrounding counties, and hopefully FEMA won't be quite as distinctive in their requests as they were for us. So hopefully they won't change it again. With that, if there are any questions, I'll try and answer those.
You said this is done every 5 years. Were you part of this then this time, or who actually drew up most of the plan?
CCOG does the plan. They take the plan we have and they just change what needs to be changed. This is Minnehaha, Lincoln County. We do that because the city of Sioux Falls is in both our counties.
And for those of you not aware, CCOG is Southeast Council of Governments, so just that information. Okay, I guess before we take board action, is there any public input on this? If not, then I guess.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
need to-
I move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Schmidt, second by Poppins to approve. Any discussion? Okay, Sherry, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes,
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
I thought you said that very diplomatically. That's to FEMA's input.
Yeah, you try and say it as nice as you possibly can.
All right, moving to item number 6. Mr. Floyd?
Terry Floyd, Highway Superintendent. First item I have for you today is board action to request bids for a 2024 road striping project for the Highway Department. So in the past, this has been done through the DOT, has facilitated this bid, but they came to us about a year and a half ago looking to delegate this back down to the counties to do on their own if they so chose to. We have a group of us in this eastern end of the state. There's about 13 counties that are going together. We are doing a regional bid of local counties and to get our own striping bid. Because the last few years, it's just kind of been a mess with the DOT. They're short-staffed, and it gets really late, and then we have carryover, year to year. They don't get striping done one year, and then it gets finished the next year, and you got to try to plan for that. So anyway, Minnehaha County is facilitating this bid, so we're looking to go to bid with this. We'll be opening bids February 7th, I believe.
I think if I read correctly, 760 miles in Lincoln County? Is that correct? Or-
No,
No?
no, so I think, if I recall, I think I probably had about 120 miles to do,
Oh, okay. I
so
must
I think,
have
and
picked
that's
that
all
figure
made,
up somewhere else.
that's mainly retrace.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Second, any public input on this? Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to share with Terry as I was coming in late today, I spoke with a couple of my friends coming from Turner County, and they appreciated the work that the county from Lincoln did compared to the roads that they were traveling on prior to that transition over. So staff's doing a good job according to our residents in Turner County. Thank you.
All right, good.
Forward
Thank
that
you.
on to the guys.
Okay, call the roll, Sherry.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. Terry?
Next
Yours.
item I have for you is board action to approve the purchase of a 2022 307.5 Caterpillar excavator from Butler Cap in the amount of $89,073. This is a unit, this is a budgeted item in '24 here. Back in August, September last year, we started renting this unit. This was on their rental list from Butler, and they'd had very, very few hours on it. And we just kept renting it month after month, and finally they came to us and they're like, well, we could do this purchase, and all your rental will go towards your purchase. So that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna keep this machine.
Good.
And again, we're replacing, this machine will replace an old JCB backhoe that we have. So we will be surplusing that.
Okay, any public input?
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Schmidt, second by Commissioner Poppins. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes. Thank you.
Next item I have for you is board action to approve the removal of structure 42-110-253 from the National Bridge Inventory, the NBI. So this structure, I don't know, several years ago when Northern Natural Gas was replacing pipeline down in the southern part of the county, they were pretty much following 475th Avenue. So this structure got a lot of attention as the pipeline folks were crossing this structure, and this was a 5-ton bridge at the time. We ended up closing this structure. Well, that got replaced in 2023 as a part of our local project. We put pipe in there instead, and now the pipe are spread apart enough where this is no longer classified as a system or a bridge on the NBI, and the National Bridge Inventory System. So we're looking to remove it.
Okay, any public input? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Poppins, second by Commissioner Schmidt. Any discussion? All right, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Gibbon?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Item number 10, I guess, Tracy is not here.
Commissioners, can you
Oh,
hear me?
you are here. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, Tracy Humphrey, HR Director. I'm presenting to you all, if you refer to your briefing form, we have a request per our sick leave assistance program. That's in our employee handbook 10.4, and this application 2008. I'm asking for approval to approve this request. Given that the information is related to an employee's status and their FMLA, that is why you'll need to refer to your briefing form for more information, but I can answer any questions.
Any questions by this commission?
Tracy, is this a departure from our normal procedure? Is it new, or is it an extension? Can you enlighten me a little bit?
Certainly, yes. So during my tenure here, we've only had one other request, and we did that, I believe, we have like executive session with board action after. But we have in the past done this where we've presented the briefing form to you all for review, and then just HR would request for your approval. Per our policy, the request is that the commission does have to review and approve this. The applicant is in compliance with the actual program that we have laid out in the employee handbook, so this is just a formal approval by you all.
Mr. Chairman, I'll offer a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Is there discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes, motion carried. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Let's see, Steve, do we have executive session today?
No items.
Okay, Drew, no items? Okay, I guess with that being said, again, opportunity for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Again, if you could limit yourself to 5 minutes, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Linda Montgomery from Fairview, South Dakota. I am so happy to be in front of you today to tell you that our Secretary of State has confirmed that the CVRs are public record, and so is the audit logs. Since 2021, I have been coming to you with this data, that we have done the research, and if we would have been allowed 3 years ago to present it to you, you would have come up with the same conclusion. Initially, we were told that CVRs didn't exist. We were told that the machines can make them, but we can't see them. Then we were told they were proprietary and not allowed to be seen. In the beginning, not one of the auditors or the commissioners knew the public records. This was a disservice by a private for-profit vendor, ES&S, who either withheld this information, covered it up, misread, it's been a cover-up. Now, the Secretary of State considers it an emergency, and she's bringing an emergency bill, Senate Bill 48, that an act to provide for the disclosure of cast vote records and ballot images as a public record and declared an emergency, that it is done now. I ask that you please give us the CVRs and the audit logs that we have been asking for since 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other items from the public? Okay, Commissioner's report then.
Mr. Poppins, I want to go back, since this is a public, we can
Hold on
talk.
just a minute.
Oh,
We got one more.
Oh, we do have one more. Okay.
excuse me, sir.
Sir, name and address
apologize.
and limit yourself to 5 minutes, please.
Donald R. Clausen, 47174 275th Street. Several years ago, when we complained about taxes, Mr. Poppins says, "You live in a highly desirable area." He's right. In 1972, we paid $5,000 for 5 acres, $1,000 an acre. I'd like to show you the La Valley plat. Recently, a businessman paid $250,000 for 5 acres immediately adjoining us on Section 8. Be right here. That's $50,000 an acre, 50,000 times more than what we paid in 1972. On the same section along 472nd Avenue, a property was listed for $1.1 million. I don't know what it sold for, but that was listed for. West of us, the third property, the owner wants to sell 8 acres for $1.3 million. Besides the house, there's also a horse barn. The most recent issue of the Epic Times has an 8.5 by 12 article. Talking about eminent domain,
Sir, we talked about eminent domain on our agenda today, so that's not a topic
What's
you
that?
can talk about. We talked about eminent domain on our agenda today, so that's not an item you can talk about. Do you have
Okay.
another item?
no, I'm going to go on.
Okay.
Over here, Summit has proposed $18 million capture with 30 ethanol plants in Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, Minnesota, and North Dakota. The real kicker is they have to do the pipeline through private property, South Dakota State Representative said. The way it has been achieved by companies declaring themselves common carriers typically includes other things than carbon dioxide. This designation allows private companies to take privately owned land by eminent domain. Going on. According to Mrs. Lems, more than 150 landowners were served papers by Summit condemning portions. Our neighbor a mile south of us was served papers. The biggest concern is that we are setting a precedent, talks again about eminent domain, but the biggest promoter is BlackRock. Summit is conspiring to push forward with its pipeline plan. With the 5 north townships in Lincoln County, they have the higher valuation than the rest of the county. The decision about the pipeline is going to be recognized by the Epoch Times, which is circulated in 36 countries in 22 languages. So Lincoln County decision about the pipeline is going to be big business. The CO pipeline has no business being laid in North Lincoln County. Minnehaha County required 500-foot setback. Moody County required 1,500-foot setback. Because North Lincoln County is a highly desirable area, please make the setback 1/4 mile from the nearest wall of a habitable building. Better yet, require the pipeline to be laid south of Canton instead of north. Thank you for allowing time for public comment.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, now I will turn it over to any commissioners have any information they'd like to share.
Well, Commissioner Poppins, today we took a step, I don't know, backwards, forwards, by not going on this. And we've talked about this before. You know, there is nothing, and I don't want the citizens of Canton to get all riled up, but there's nothing that says that this facility has to be built in Canton. And I know that the community never really stepped up and offered a great deal of assistance in trying to locate property that was suitable. So consequently, we were forced to look at property that probably we wouldn't necessarily have looked at prior to, because we did explore lots of other options. So, you know, that, and in the future, I think that this residents of Canton have better stop and look at the demographics of the population. Because when you have 80% of your people living within the city limits of Sioux Falls, if they ever decided that they had enough, that they didn't want to drive down here, that they didn't want to do all of that kind of stuff, there could be a lot of an election, which would be, I think, to the dismay of the residents of the county, because your county seat may not end up in the most eastern, our southeastern portion of it.
Commissioner Schmidt, I will share with you briefly, just for clarification, it does have to be in your county seat. And the city of Canton is designated Lincoln County seat. And it was an arduous task to try to find I'm
hear.
speaking into the mic. I don't know how much better I can do.
Okay.
Anyway, back to trying to find a spot in Canton or the close proximity enough to make it viable was not an easy task. Even the site that was selected, I would say, would not be premier. It comes with its shortcomings. It comes with things that have to be adjusted. First of all, it wasn't on the market, 20 acres, correct me, was on the market and acquired. 20 acres was approached and purchased directly from the landowner. But a critical part of that was known at the time of purchasing those acres, that access would have to be improved. The city has not ever once contacted myself. I don't know if they contacted anybody else on the commission or anybody from the county trying to assist in the process. I'm going to say that I was disappointed through the whole process that not a single representative from the city ever tried to assist in trying to find a suitable site for something that was literally going to make a significant impact for 100 years of Lincoln County and Canton, South Dakota. If this site does not have a suitable access to it, and I think that is crucial to be to Highway 18 directly, I no longer can support the site because I find it not acceptable at all. What does that mean? If there's another site that can be acquired, great. Otherwise, I think Lincoln County residents have to take a long, hard look at what the future is and what that entitles, and everything can be on the table. Thank you, Commissioner Schmidt.
Thank you. All right, I think that concludes our business for today. If there's no executive session, I guess I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion by Schmidt, seconded by Poppins to adjourn. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes, we are adjourned. For me.